All right, it is Monday. We have 1 day away from getting to watch Lenore Sellers, Nikki Manwari, and the crew play in the Cheez-It Bowl. So I hope you woke up feeling. This is your Cheez-It Bowl preview. South Carolina, Illinois. Locked On Gamecock starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. I hope all of you had a fantastic weekend, fantastic Sunday, all the above. We are back, and I want to say before we get started, this is your Cheez-It Bowl preview. But before we get into it, want to give a shout out to everyone that makes Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we are a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right. I don't want to say it's going to be a quick one. I don't know. I always say that, and then I go on and on and on and on. We are going to preview Illinois, and it's such a weird way to do previews now for these bowl games, because it's like, I think we've all been amped up from the moment we knew that Carolina was going to be left out of the playoff. It was like, all right, what's up next? Who's up next? Like almost a little bit after, I don't want to date myself here, but like the old wrestler Goldberg mentality, like who's next? And Illinois, you're next. You are next up on the schedule down in Orlando. I want to revisit a few things just as to why this is a big deal. I'm like blown away in this day and age of football how like serious Carolina fans have taken this game. It's awesome. Like in this day and age, when you hear all the time, like, oh, well, the only thing that's going to matter is the college football playoff, and no one's going to care about these bowl games, blah, blah, blah. Like from the moment these tickets went on sale, they were almost sold out from Carolina fans. Like I was hoping, I kept saying this in the, during the season, I was hoping they would get like a blue blood. Like it would be awesome to go beat a Michigan, right? It would be awesome to even like if it's like a Nebraska, even though they went like 6-6. So it's not a super compelling matchup, but it is a good matchup. I mean, Illinois is a 9-3 football team from the Big Ten. You could make the argument that the Big Ten is the deepest conference. I wouldn't make that argument, but a lot of people would, just because they had 4 teams in the college football playoff. But a 9-3 team, you have a chance to do something that very few South Carolina teams have done in the program's history, and that's get to 10 wins. That's a big deal. I mean, that's a big deal. And I love the fact that it is known as a big deal. They're not brushing this aside. They're not sweeping this under the rug. They're not pretending like, oh, it's just another game, blah, blah, blah. Like getting to 10 wins, especially after what happened in the beginning part of the season and preseason from all the national pundits and all that kind of crap, it's a very big deal to this team, and I love that. Like I love the pride that seemingly Pepper says hello, guys. You cannot be a part of this show. Yeah. Unbelievable. But I love the pride that the team has seemingly had. I'll tell you another thing I also like about this. I love the fact that Robbie Ashford is getting to play in part of bowl prep, because they asked the senior leaders and the captains their opinion on getting him on whether or not he should play, even though he's in the portal. It's just another example of how Pepper, can I record the podcast? What is going on here? Okay. Sorry guys, my corgi Pepper is just needing some attention today. But I love the fact that like that just speaks more about the culture still with like what they have instilled inside those 4 walls of the program. You hear me say it all the time. It's just a great job. It's just a great job. I love the way this team has been focused coming out of Christmas break. They went down on the 26th. This game will be played, as I'm recording this, tomorrow in about 30 hours. So let's get to know Illinois. Brett Bielema is the coach. If you haven't seen any of the pictures of Beamer and Bielema next to each other, it's hysterical. Because obviously they are much different sizes than one another. I will say that. You got to get down, Pep. Thank you. So Illinois in general, like what to expect from them. So I'll just take you through some of the just like by the numbers, so you can get to know them. Again, this is a team that won 9 games, but they really like some of these games late especially weren't great. You lose to Minnesota, which Minnesota is fine. I believe it was on the road, so that's whatever. You get just absolutely blitzkrieged by Oregon. You lose by 29 points in that game, which that's fair. Oregon beat a lot of teams like that, so whatever. But you look at what they also did against lesser competition, like I think that's where my main concern would be for if I'm an Illinois fan. You're already going to be without your top receiver. That's a kid that had about 950 yards receiving, and you look at the numbers on that. That makes up roughly 40%. I believe it's 4%. Let me do the numbers on that real quick. Yeah, it's about 40% on the dot of the overall production for quarterback Luke Altmaier. Here's the other thing that I think is the biggest matchup, and I was going to say it to the second thing. But we never know how the internet's going to be anyway out here. So the offensive line for Illinois is not great. Like, we have talked about the issues that the South Carolina offensive line has had for most of the season, giving up 39 sacks. And I think it was like between that and last year, you've given up around 80 or something like that in the last two seasons. Here's the deal. This is an Illinois offensive line, 31. They're ranked, I think, like 97th in the country in sacks allowed. I mean, I understand you're without Kyle Kennard, but this is still a unit that has got after the quarterback's ass all year long. Doesn't matter who it is. So Dylan Stewart could have a monster game here for South Carolina. The other part of it too is really where are you going to get from a like this is a 9-3 team, but it's a 9-3 team with just like all sorts of flaws, right? Like you start the season with 4 straight wins, you close the season with 3 straight wins. Who are those wins against? Michigan State, who's god awful, at Rutgers, who I think finished the season 6-6. You beat them, you allowed 31 points in that game, and then you beat a bad Northwestern team 38-28, also on the road in that weird makeshift stadium they have while they're doing all their construction. It's basically a soccer field. But you lose to Minnesota, you lose to Oregon, you beat Michigan, which is a big deal on paper, but Michigan sucks. Here's one game, and you should never go out here and say, all right, let's hinge everything off one game. Because if you wanted to do that with South Carolina, you would look at the Ole Miss game and be like, how the hell did this happen? But I keep looking at this one game specifically, partially because I bet on it. It was like the lock of the week we talked about on here. It was Illinois-Purdue. And this is way back in the start of October. And Illinois went to Purdue. I think it was on the road. Either way, and I remember saying on this episode, or it was at home, on this show, hey, Purdue hasn't scored a first quarter point all year long. Take Illinois, blah, blah, blah. Like, take them in the first half, take them in the first quarter, take them to score first, all that kind of stuff. All those things hit. In the second half, they gave up 46 points. 46 points. It's hard to look at, especially if you're just doing it through box scores. And I'm not going to watch tape of Illinois, I'll be honest with you. I'll watch some. I'm not going to sit down and break down an entire season's worth of Big Ten football, probably ever, unless it's like unless it's an Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon type thing. I would have a hard time sitting down and watching this Illinois football team for that long. These 9-3s are not the same 9-3s. The potential 10 wins for South Carolina is a different 10 win than what Illinois would have. Illinois has played 2 ranked opponents that are currently ranked all season long. That was Penn State and it was Oregon. In those 2 games, and those are 2 good defenses, right? They scored a total of 16 points. I don't know where the points are going to come for Illinois. They don't score against good opponents. You're without your best player. You're without arguably the best defensive player in the entire country with Kyle Kennard being out. But I still don't see where those points are going to come from. All of that leads me to think it could be a little early. It's a good, hard-nosed team. Anytime you see a Brett Bielema team, you know they're going to run the foot. Who started, I think, 2 or 3 years now for Illinois. He's gone. Like, he's gone. But still, I think this is a team that is going to try and fight fire with fire and pound the football against this front seven. All right, we're going to continue talking about this game, obviously. Before we do, I do want to give a shout out to our friends at Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or you're paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. You guys have heard me talk about it. One of you in the comments on YouTube made a point that maybe I shouldn't be an idiot and have multiple subscriptions, which is a good point. But in case you are like me and you aren't if you're a more absent-minded person, Rocket Money is the tool for you to help set some financial freedoms and get ahead financially in 2025, especially. I know a lot of us make New Year's resolutions, and Rocket help with any New Year's resolution, especially that you have with your finances moving forward. It's a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions or spending habits or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and have saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions. That's insane. Saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. I've already told you how it's helped me before, and it's helped me in the past, and it'll help me in the future as well. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions, reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked on. Rocketmoney.com/. All right. Hang with us. We will be locked on Gamecocks. We will continue next. All right. So let's continue on with the rest of this preview. Welcome back in Locked on Gamecocks. As I've told you before, I'm your host, Chris Marler. Here's the deal. Now, this line is at 10.5. I would think that from a betting standpoint, South Carolina to score I like South Carolina to cover, first off. There are some things that would cause you to pause and make you a little bit hesitant about this team. Like, what is the offense going to look like with Mike Shula now calling plays, with Dowell Loggins gone to App State? Like, what does that look like when you don't have Rocket Sanders, who has been, by all means, the main part of the offense? I fully get how much we have watched Lenore Sellers blossom in front of our eyes, flourish into becoming one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country. By the way, side note, from a very reliable source, we talked about this the other day, and some of the people behind the scenes at South Carolina. I talked to one of my friends associated with Auburn the day. The Auburn NIL package for Lenore Sellers was over $2 million, or it was at $2 million at least. That's so any speculation of like what other teams are coming after him. I told you guys it was in this conference and it was that team specifically, but that's the kind of money that was being thrown up at Lenore Sellers for one season, not to come here and finish out your career, for one season. $2 million. Again, just a tremendous job by this staff. What is the offense going to look like? What does the offense look like without Rocket Sanders more than anything? I mean, that was the main guy. Like that's the guy. Like, and even if it wasn't from a standpoint of, hey, he's getting the bulk of the carries, which he was. We're gonna give him 25, 30 touches, which sometimes it happened. I believe. I don't know those numbers to be exact, but you talk about in the passing game, like Rocket Sanders out of the backfield, not just running the football, but out of the backfield in the passing game was something that I didn't expect to see as much, but we saw it a ton. You look at games like Missouri, like you don't win that game without Lenore Sellers. You quite literally don't lose or win that game without Rocket Sanders. Catching a pass or a shovel pass, going into the end zone, running over and dragging people like into the end zone with like less than 15 seconds left. That's a kid that, like, there was times that were frustrating. Clemson, he had a couple of those turnovers. But by all means, like that has been such a massive part of this offense and this team. How does that kid be replaced? Right now, you've got some guys in place already on this roster that I think you're gonna highlight and you're gonna see. But I do expect this to be more of they're going to run the football. We talked about that. Like, I don't think you're going to see some massive change. Like, you are not going to see some crazy difference in ideologies and schemes and in approach offensively with Mike Shula calling the plays versus Dowell Loggins. You're just not, especially in this short-term period where it's like you've had basically a month with him at the helm and calling the plays and all that kind of stuff. I don't think you're going to see these massive, overwhelming changes in the offense. Like I said, schematically, ideology, all that kind of stuff. I do think you are going to feature Lenore Sellers' legs more, and I think you're going to feature Lenore Sellers' arm more than anything else. I've told this story before. One of the best things I've ever heard from an offensive mind and play caller, Lane Kiffin. coming into the Sugar Bowl in 2013, I think it was after the Bama kick six, he gets brought in as an analyst and he puts on this, he says, okay, this is very simple. And he puts up on the board, he puts 5 numbers up, circles them, and he goes, these are your 5 best offensive players. Get them the ball. And guys, it was like, I think the numbers, it was like O.J. Howard, who was like a big tight end. I think he went first round. Amari Cooper, T.J. Yeldon, Derrick Henry. It was like, yeah, of course, like get them the ball. But whoever was in place wasn't doing that. Get your playmakers the ball, right? Like I know you're without Rocket Sanders. You got some dudes on this roster, and you've got some mismatches when you talk about how they're going to go up against Illinois. So that's the concern I would have. Like that's the concern I have with, like, it's not even a concern. It's just if there's something to give you a little bit of hesitancy about what could be different, because you won 6 games in a row. You are the hottest team in the country by all means. Like this is the best. There's not a team in college football playing better football, I think, at the end of the season in South Carolina. I just firmly believe that. But you've had a month off. Is there going to be a little bit of like discombobulation coming in from with like the time off? It's been a while since that Clemson game, right? Like you didn't play in championship week. You've had 15 bowl practices, but what does all that look like moving forward in this game specifically? Now, the good news is you're going up against a team that I just flat out think is inferior. I just think is inferior. Now, they're not bad defensively, but I'll just give you some of the numbers that stood out to me. They're 71st in total defense allowed, giving up 372 yards per game. It's whatever. They are 71st in rush yards allowed with 150 per game, and 80th in yards per carry allowed, 4.4. So it makes sense to maybe have that be where you want to attack. They're top 40 in yards per completion, yards per attempt, and then quarterback rating, which is great. They're 94th in the country in completions allowed, which I don't really, that's getting into like some of the nitty gritty. I think they're, just to sum it up, they're better in pass defense than they are rush defense. I don't know if that makes you really change philosophies or how you attack this game, because they're not super great at either, right? Like I understand the top 40 ranking some of this stuff, but like they're by the bottom half a lot of stuff. They attack. They're really bad in special teams. Really bad in special teams. Not a ton of attempts in field goals. Not a ton of makes in field goals. Really bad in punt returns. All of those rank in the bottom 30, bottom 40 in the country. Right. I don't know if that translates to breaking out a big run, breaking out a big return, whatever. We haven't seen a ton of those this year necessarily. Now might be the time for one. They struggle in special teams, which is the first key matchup, right? The other one is I just don't know offensively what Illinois is going to do. I just don't. Like 40% of your overall passing like production is gone. Or 40% of your receiving production for your quarterback, Luke Altmaier, is gone. Luke Altmaier, by all means, former Ole Miss kid, 4-star quarterback out of high school, good recruit, good player. Got around 22 touchdowns this year, only 5 interceptions. Like that's all fantastic. But you look at the numbers of this offense, 91st in total yards allowed, less than 370 per game, 79th in rushing yards, 151 per game, 83rd in passing yards, 214 per game, 63rd in scoring at just under 29 points per game. You're in the bottom half of the country in almost everything except for scoring, and that's because you're 4 spots above the midway line. I mean, keep going back to, though, you're 97th in sacks allowed. It should be a field day for Dylan Stewart. The other part, too, the secondary. I think Illinois is going to try and line up and run the football and establish the run. Like, I don't know if that'll be their bread and butter where they'll try to attack for 4 straight quarters, because you do have a quarterback that has got good production. He's a fan favorite. He announced he's coming back next year. That's all great. But his main guy is gone. You have Zakai Franklin. Kid was in the portal last year. Good. I think he's a 4-star player in the portal. He's a pretty big get for them. He's there, and he's got about 550 yards of receiving this year. But your main go-to target is gone, like flat out. Where are they going to attack this defense? Because it sucks that Kennard's not going to be there, but everyone else is. So I just have a hard time, and I don't feel like this is me being a homer. I have a hard time thinking that this team is going to put up points against this defense. This is by all means for South Carolina an elite defense. It has been all season. And there's been times where they've given up points, all that kind of stuff, but they've given up points, it seems like Alabama, that has one of the better offenses in the conference. Ole Miss, who has one of the better offenses in the country, right? You still didn't even give up 30 to either one of those teams. Like that's an elite defense. This is not an elite offense. It's not really an elite team. And I'm not trying to dismiss Illinois because clearly they've won 9 games and they've had a good season. But again, you lost to Minnesota, you lost to Oregon, you lost to Penn State, and it's not even the fact that like it in the game against Oregon, you know, like I said, you lose by almost 30. The game against Penn State on the road is not that bad. Like you lost 21-7. So again, I just have a very hard time trying to rack my brain with where they're going to get points. I would be honestly, I would be shocked if they score over 17. Would be surprised they score over 14. I think they're going to score 10. I think they'll. I think just prediction wise, because of course we're 20 minutes in, the internet is starting to act up, which makes no sense, and I'm going to lose my mind talking about it. But I think that final score, I got Carolina 24-10. I could see 27-13 type range. I do think they cover the spread. I do think you see a great game from Lenore Sellers. You might be a little bit clunky first, you know, like to start the game, but it doesn't feel like something where you're going to be playing from behind, where you're going to be having any sort of like late game dramatics like you had at some points late in the season. I just don't think Illinois is built that way. And I've watched their game against Nebraska almost in its entirety. That, of course, was in September. So how much can you take away from that? It's a good win for them. They went on the road and beat Nebraska by I think it was 8. 28-20. Pepper says hello again. But I've got final score South Carolina 24, Illinois 10. I do think this is a 2-touchdown type situation. Like I said, maybe clunky early on, maybe a little bit wonky because of just the layoff, which is expected in bowl games. But I think South Carolina wins. I think my dog's going to drive me crazy. And I think it's going to be a good start and good into this year and a good start of 2025 in the campaign. This could be a top 10 team going into next season, depending on the pieces they bring back or get out of the portal. It's a very exciting time. So that is all for today's show. I hope all of you have a fantastic rest of your afternoon. Make sure if after you listen to Locked On for your first listen to my buddy Chris Gordy over there at SEC or Locked On SEC for your second listen. All right, I got to go walk Pepper. Love you guys. Have a great day. Go Cox.